All right, the recording is set. Please go ahead, Francis.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this 42nd webinar on the Secret Doctrine. This webinar series is available on makara.us under the subheadings Moria Federation Webinars, then Webinar Series in Progress, as shown here. All episodes of this and the Secret Teaching series are also now available on YouTube. Just do a search for Francis Donald, Secret Doctrine, or Secret Teachings. As is our habit, we'll start by checking in on HPB and Colonel Olcott's travels. This month is just Colonel Olcott, as described in old diary leaves. We are currently nearing the end of Volume 2. After a brief respite in Adayar, Olcott once again makes his way to Colombo, Ceylon, where he was considered a national hero. So, he was a lot more than just HPB's sidekick. He was a great healer in his own right. So could we get a reader, please?
Sure, I'll start this one off. Let us begin with my arrival on 17th July at Tinian Valley, the station where our Colombo Buddhist committee and I planted the coconut amid the tumultuous rejoicings described in a former chapter. We reached the station at 6 p.m. and found a huge crowd waiting. 5 thick ropes of flowers, rather than garlands, were put about my neck and mounted to the top of my head. My hands, arms, and pockets were filled with ripe limes, the fruit of welcome and respect. I was put into a canopied sedan chair. The chief local and government officials walked beside. In front and behind me along the dusty road, a young Brahmin threw loose flowers on and about me and tossed them into the air, strewing the road with an odorous carpet. The temple Brahmins came and handed me the flower-wreathed silver lota and the tray on which lay a broken coconut, some red powder, limes, and camphor. The procession moved on with waving flags and banners. 2 bands of musicians, one from the temple, clanged their wild music. And so we proceeded until the flower and plant festooned bungalow assigned to me was reached, and I was allowed to get in from the heat of the road and enjoy its coolness. A welcome was here spoken by an ex-judge of Travancore, a learned and estimable gentleman, to which I responded, of course. Does it not seem as if all this gave the lie to the that missionary tale of 1881, that the Orthodox Brahmins had felt so outraged with the pollution of the temple by our coconut planting party that they had uprooted the nut and purified the premises to get rid of our unholy taint? But why waste time or spoil one's bloods, as the Russians say, in refuting the numberless calamities that have ever circulated against us when they refute themselves, all in good time?
Okay. Reader, please.
Lynn, can you read it now?
Yes, except the bottom of the page is cut off. The bottom sentence, I mean. The next day I lectured on the lawn outside my bungalow to an audience which included all the leading men of the place. At the close, I made an earnest appeal for the supply of a good theosophical library for Hindu boys, and got a very handsome sum subscribed on the spot. This, if my memory serves me, was the first of a long series of successes in the same direction, and down to the present moment, I have continued to press the claims of Indian youth upon their elders for the means of proper religious culture. I hope that when I leave the scene, somebody among my colleagues will thoroughly cultivate this best, most fertile of all mental and moral fields in India. There is no other to be compared with it. As the publicity given by the Ceylon press to my early healings created an importunate demand for repetitions on the Bengal tour, so the exciting narratives of the North Indian papers caused me to be urged with equal pertinacity to exercise the power for the benefit of the sick in South India. They besieged me at Tinalap Valley, as at all the other stations, and some marvelous cures were wrought. An entry of a few words in my diaries for the 20th July recalls to memory one of the most dramatic experiences of my life. I had gone to the pagoda to sprinkle, and I can't see the rest.
The tree of friendship was some refined rose water and was followed by at least 1,000 idlers who, for lack of better amusement, watched my every step and exchanged opinions on my personal appearance. Reader, please.
Victor, can you read that for us, please?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
A young man of 25 or 30 was brought me through the press by his father with a prayer that I would restore his speech, which he had lost 3 years before. Having neither elbow room nor breathing space, I climbed up on the continuous pedestal or basement that supports a long line of monolithic carved figures of Hindu deities, drew the patient up after me, called for silence, and made the father tell the people about the case. What then happened may as well be quoted from the printed commentary record, a letter from the well-known late S. something, FTS, in the Theosophical Supplement, August 1883, amidst a great crowd, says he, right in front of the Nelliyappa temple, the colonel laid his hands on the unfortunate dumb man. 7 circular passes on the head and 7 long passes, all occupying less than 5 minutes, and speech was restored to the no more silent man. The colonel, amidst deafening shouts of applause and thundering clapping of hands, made him pronounce the names of Siva, Gopala, Rama, Ramchanada. Boy, I'll tell you these words.
Ramachandra.
As glibly as any other bystander could. The news of the restoration of speech spread at once throughout the town and created a great sensation. And no wonder, for when I made the patient shout the sacred names at the top of his voice, half the crowd rushed out in the streets in mad excitement, waving their arms over their heads and crying in Indian fashion, wah, wah, wah.
Thanks. It seems a particularly appropriate one for you to read, Victor. Victor's a healer in his own right. Okay, could we get a reader for this next page, please?
Okay. Trudy, can you read that for us, please?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Recollecting the means, tricks the missionaries had played on me at the first visit in circulating a scurrilous pamphlet against HPV and myself, to which in contravened mention of law no publisher's or printer's name was attached, and in putting afloat the falsehood about the
Coconut.
tree having been uprooted by indignant Brahmins, I planted a little deserved punishment on them. I told the patient's father to take his son to the chief missionaries at Olcott, a suburb of Tinnevelly, tell them about the cure, quote to them the 17th and 18th verses of St. Mark, 15th chapter, and demand on behalf of the Hindu community that in proof of their divine commission, they could restore speech to somebody as I had done in the pagoda. They replied to be communicated to the Hindu public. Several days later, he came and reported to me the result. I had expected some amusement, but fancy my surprise when he told me that one of the chief padres had declared his story a lie, and not one would believe that his son had ever been speechless. The subterfuge was so ingenious that it excited my profound admiration, and I had a good laugh over their astuteness, more than they had, I imagine, since the man was known to be known to the whole town, and the cure had been made with the greatest publicity.
Thank you. Okay. We are at the very end of HPB's commentary on the particularly significant verse 2 of stanza 5, which reads, "They make of him the messenger of their will. The Dzayu becomes Fohat, the swift son of the divine sons, whose sons are the Lapika, runs circular errands. He is the steed, and the thought is the rider. He passes like lightning through the fiery clouds, takes 3 and 5 and 7 strides through the 7 regions above and the 7 below. He lifts his voice and calls the innumerable sparks, atoms, and joins them together." So, last paragraph of a 9-page commentary, longest so far on a verse. Could we get a reader for this last paragraph, please?
Carrie, can you read that for us, please?
There, the Hindus and Aryans, rishis and gods, their demons and heroes, have historical and ethical meanings. And the Aryans never made their religion rest solely on physiological symbols, as the old Hebrews have done. This is found in the exoteric Hindu scriptures. That these accounts are blinds is shown by their contradicting each other, a different construction being found in almost every Purana and epic poem. Read esoterically, they will all yield the same meaning. Thus, one account enumerates 7 worlds, exclusive of the netherworlds, also 7 in number. These 14 upper and nether worlds have nothing to do with the classification of the septenary chain and belong to the purely ethereal, invisible worlds. These will be noticed elsewhere. Suffice for the present to show that they are purposely referred to as though they belong to the chain. Another enumeration calls the 7 worlds, earth, sky, heaven, middle region, place of birth, mansion of the blessed, and abode of truth, placing the sons of Brahma in the 6th division and stating the 5th or Yana Loka to be that where the animals destroyed in the general conflagration are born again. See Hindu Classical Dictionary. Some real esoteric teaching is given in the symbolism. He who is prepared for it will understand the hidden meaning.
Thank you, Carrie. Any thoughts or questions about this? It's a paragraph basically about blinds, right? She's not intending to get into a deep study of Hinduism or of the locos, but referencing this statement about the historical and ethical meaning of the Hindu and Aryan gods, there are no better illustrations as to the depths of Hindu esotericism than the 2 scenes illustrated here. First, Vishnu and Lakshmi on Sesha or Ananta, contemplating the creation with Brahm, springing on a lotus from his navel to perform it, each figure a profound philosophy in itself. And secondly, Shiva and Parvati conjoined, called then Ardha Nari. This illustration depicts the high hermaphroditic union familiar to students of Theosophy. It's hard to find as esoteric illustrations as exist in the fundamental Hindu philosophy. Next, that these accounts are blinds is shown by their contradicting each other, a different construction being found in almost every Purana and epic poem. Read esoterically, they will all yield the same meaning. HPB here suggests that the very fact that the accounts are contradictory is in itself a red flag indicating that there are blinds present. Now, blinds protect the truth from the unready while allowing those who are ready to recognize and then follow the blind inward to its esoteric source, as HPB here indicates. He who's prepared for it will understand the hidden meaning. Any thoughts or questions so far? In this passage, HPB makes a distinction between the successive globes and around and the stratified realms of consciousness called lokas that coexist on these globes. Obviously, HPB's intent is to provide an example of a blind, not to launch us into a study of traditional Hinduism. Here's the title page of Dowson's excellent classical dictionary on Hindu mythology, along with the page cited here by HPB on the lokas. It's quite involved, but quite fascinating. It has an esoteric bent to it. Any thoughts or questions? HPB chose to use the latter part of her commentary on verse 2 to discuss topics not really part of the verse itself, such as the nature of blinds and exoteric aspects of Kabbalism. That's fine, but let's not lose sight of the fact that the verse itself focuses almost entirely on Fohat, which HPB tells us is, quote, one of the most, if not the most, important characters in esoteric cosmogony. Okay, before analyzing the verse itself, let's take a look at what DK has to say about Fohat. During this first quote, keep in mind that all these titles are synonyms for Fohatic energy. Could we get a reader for this page, please?
Karen, can you read that for us, please?
Yes. The boat of mystery which plows the ocean. This secret of electricity, which is essentially triple in its nature, deals with the Brahma or third aspect and is called sometimes by the following names. 1, the secret of Brahma. 2, the revelation of the mother. 3, the secret of Fohatic force. 4, the mystery of the creator. 5, the secret of the three who issued from the first solar system. And also by 4 mystic phrases conveying much light to the intuition. 6, the boat of mystery which plows the ocean. 7, the key to the divine storehouse. 8, the light that guides through the triple caves of darkness. And 9, the clue to the energy uniting fire and water. Initiation, human and solar.
Okay, could we get a reader for this? Trying to give you some sense of the Alice Bailey's understanding of Fohat.
Martha, can you read that for us, please?
Yes. Fohat, cosmic electricity, primordial light, the ever-present electrical energy, the universal propelling vital forces, the ceaseless destructive and formative power, the synthesis of the many forms of electric phenomena from the glossary Initiation Human and Solar. Akasha in manifestation expresses itself as Fohat or divine energy, and Fohat on the different planes is known as ether, air, fire, water, electricity, ether, prana, and similar terms. It is the sum total of that which is active, animated, or vitalized, and of all that concerns itself with the adaptation of the form to the needs of the inner flame of life. Treatise on Cosmic Fire 43-44. Fohat is that active, fiery intelligence who is the basis of the internal fires of the solar system. On each plane, one of these brothers holds sway, and the three elder brothers, for always the three will be seen, and later the seven, who eventually merge into the primary three, rule on the first, third, and the fifth planes, or on the planes of Adi, of Atma, and of Manas. It is urgent that we here remember that they are fire viewed in its third aspect, the fire of matter. In their totality, these seven lords form the essence of the cosmic lord, called in the occult books Fohat. Treatise on Cosmic Fire 65-66. Agni is Fohat, the threefold energy emanating from the logoic ego, which produces the solar system, the physical vehicle of the logos, and animates the atoms of substance. He is the basis of the evolutionary process, or the cause of the psychic unfoldment of the logos. And he is that vitality which ultimately brings about a divine synthesis in which the form approximates subjective demand, and after being consciously directed and manipulated, is finally discarded. This is the goal for the logos, as it is for man. This marks the final liberation of a human being, of a heavenly man, and of a solar logos. Treatise on Cosmic Fire, page 610.
Okay, any thoughts or questions?
Yes, we have a hand up. Hold on a minute. Let me find it. Go ahead, Robert.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I wonder, Francis, if we could go back to that page from Initiation Human and Solar that has the, that's right. Would you speak a little bit about perhaps the last four phrases, the mystic phrases, and maybe just choose one or even all of them, and give some of your thoughts on what they might refer to?
Okay, sure. One of the, you caught me at a good time because my main conference presentation is going to be on Fohat, and so I've been reading a lot about it lately. So the Fohat is fundamentally a vehicle or a vahan that unites spirit and matter, right? Without Fohat, what you would have is Mula Prakriti, which is the divine mother aspect, as is radiant substance, and you would have spirit completely unmanifest and no way for them to come together. So Fohat is the medium by which they are able to connect, and therefore it's seen as the in the case of this first number 6, the ocean is ever that source of the form aspect, right? The the mysterious ocean is going to be the Divine Mother. So the beings in this boat that are shown here, and of course that's my addition, but it's accurate, in that these are the great Prajapatis, or sources of spirit, personified, right? That and Fohat becomes that which brings the two together, the ocean of substance and the great spirit beings. So therefore, the boat of mystery is the Fohatic aspect. Okay. You have a similar idea with the divine storehouse. The storehouse, again, being a vahan, or a vehicle, or that in which the divine appears, right? The triple caves of darkness are going to be the very highest aspects of the unseen realm. And the light, again, is a vahan. It's usually considered electrical in its nature, that carries the source of spirit into form, right? And then the last should by now be obvious, which is that fire and water are the fundamental polarity of spirit and matter. And the energy that unites them is this great mystery, electrical in nature, and also entified and intelligent, all quite difficult to actually conceive, that unite these two aspects.
Okay, great. That's really interesting. Would you say that these last four have a microcosmic application as well?
Let's see. Fohat works within your own self. It is by means of the soul, you could say, that monad is united to personality. Now, this is only like Fohat on the highest levels. It's not identical to, because there are other qualities involved here in this lower manifestation. But it's wherever you find the medium of reception, that soul that is embedded in the form aspect, that is able to have an experience of the higher nature, is Fohatic in quality, right? Mm-hmm. So without Fohat, you would have no striving, you would have nothing but the form aspect. But of course, that's impossible, because the form aspect itself has evolved to whatever point it exists through its own upward striving.
Okay. The reason I asked the question also is that number 8, and it says the light that guides through the triple caves of darkness. I wondered if the triple caves of darkness would apply to the personality.
Well, actually, it beautifully applies, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because you have the 3 vehicles, but you want to be careful. He really is talking in a macro cosmic level here, but it very much applies as that light that penetrates, meaning light itself is a vehicle. Mm-hmm. So spirit could not impress itself on the triple personality without this intermediary, which is the light of Fohat. Okay?
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Carrie, go ahead.
Francis, keep with the picture, if you would. It's such a beautiful picture. I would like, I have some observations, and perhaps you could comment on that. I see a whale actually drawing the boat, and then they appear to be 7 masters, the 3 at the front, and the other two and two behind. And then maybe this is Krishna. I don't know who is driving the boat, guiding the boat.
It depends on what level you put the whole thing at.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it, that there are 8 instead of 7. And what that tells me is that you have the synthesizing whole, which is normally the 7th, but you also have the expression of that. In other words, there's the monad on its own plane, for instance, and then you have the monad, which is an expression of the all-inclusive expression, which includes the soul and personality. If you ask Michael how he's doing, he says, not bad for a monad expressing itself at a personality level, and so that would be that sense of the octave, which is the sum total. And I think that could be the quality of the 8. Also, there's a particular myth of Martanda, who is the 8th left out, and you have a definite sense of that. That was the solar reality. That is, quote, left out. It's hard to say exactly. My guess is that there's a very particular myth connected with this, with this scene, a Hindu myth, which I don't know. But as always, you have these universal implications, so you can interpret it at whatever level. The whale would be very much like, let's see here, let me get back to this idea. This vehicle of the 7-headed serpent of I think it's Ananta, that is the vehicle within the of consciousness within the mula prakriti, or the substantive aspect, which is what the ocean represents, right? So you have a similar kind of sense there that it's the whale, this unknown vehicle for the sum total, makes it possible to it's in the earlier stanzas, they talked about darkness that breathed over the mother, right? And it was this source. It pre-exists the first or the third logos, the first singularity, right? So, it's as best I can do with the whale idea. It's of and from the depths of the feminine, that aspect comes forth. And it is interesting. Look, Carrie is talking about this rope that connects, the Kalahamsa, the great swan of non-being. It's really wonderful. It's good luck in Christian iconography finding something this occult. Okay, that's probably how.
Yeah, thank you, Francis. Very interesting.
It is, isn't it? I just love this particular piece.
I like the fact that the seventh man is partly hidden. All the others.
There's one here.
Obvious. Yes.
Yeah, that's really good. And also, you're going to have very specific meaning attached to these figures. Because they're just not generic at all. They're colored, right? They're of different ages. Like this one that's hidden is very youthful. It suggests to me that it's, for instance, a globe, or a Dhyanic Chohan, who's the great initiator of a cycle, who's not yet appeared, is not yet demonstrated in this total cycle, right? And then the older ones might represent cycles that have passed, but beyond that,
Thank you.
And then, of course, the tiller and the handle represents Mahat, or the universal mind, which provides direction. This isn't just a mindless meandering. And yet, that's not really what's happening, is it? It's this that is providing the direction.
Yeah, he's not actually guiding the boat. His hand is not on the tiller.
Right.
He's
Hand's
doing
not
it
on
with
the
his
tiller.
mind. I think it's mental.
Yeah, I think it's probably universal mind. It's divine mind, universal cognition. Yeah, good. I got a little deeper into it as a result of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we read this. Any questions about this? Some cool stuff in here. One point. See, where is that? Yeah. That Fohat demonstrates as, and then he gives AE, ether, air, fire, water, electricity, ether, prana. That's 7 terms, suggesting the 7 brothers Fohat and how they manifest. Prana would be how it physically manifests. That brother, that Fohatic brother, demonstrates through prana, all the way up. So it has to do with the nature of the electricity involved. I think I mentioned that again, but I did want to mention it. Okay, and let's see. Finally, we have an old commentary that describes the electrical polarity of Fohat. We get a reader for this, please.
Yes, Robert, can you read that for us, please?
The fire, I'm never sure if you can hear me.
Yes, you're.
Okay. The fire within the lesser fire findeth its progress much impelled when the circle of the moving and the unmoving of the lesser wheel within the greater wheel that moveth not in time findeth a twofold outlet. It then shineth with the glory of the twofold one and of his sixfold brother. Fohat rusheth through space. He searcheth for his complement. The breath of the unmoving one and the fire of the one who seeth the whole from the beginning rush to meet each other, and the unmoving becomes the sphere of activity.
So I'm hoping my explanations have made this a little less puzzling. The old commentaries are treasure troves of metaphor, basically, and they give you something more than just text because of the imagery involved, and also because they're from a truly ancient source. And so, but the upshot of this is that this spirit and matter seek each other, and it is Fohat rushing through space that is the vehicle searching for this complement of spirit, which is the form aspect, right? And it's, he gives a number of metaphors, each makes it a little more revealing, right? You have the breath of the unmoving one, and the fire, the one who seeth the whole from the beginning, rush to meet each other. So those are those same 2 aspects. And as a result of this coming together, the unmoving, which is always spirit, becomes this sphere of activity, or said another way, it imbues itself into the spirit of activity. Okay, so any thoughts or questions about this? Okay, having worked our way through the 9 pages of HPB's commentary on verse 2 of stanza 5, let's take a closer look at the verse itself. Unlike some verses, HPB has directly addressed many of the specific phrases in this verse. First up, they make of him the messenger of their will. The him in this phrase is the fiery whirlwind, right? From the last phrase of the previous verse. HPB tells us in the first sentence of her commentary on that this messenger is Fohat, who in his role as messenger of their will becomes their Vahan or vehicle. So Fohat is the fiery whirlwind, Vahan of the primordial seven, and the messenger of their will. Next, the Dzayu becomes Fohat. Again, we have HPB's commentary. Dzayu is the expression of the collective wisdom of the Dhyani Buddhas. This collective wisdom is universal mind. When we pair this with the fact that Dzayu becomes Fohat, we can assume or hypothesize that Dzayu, the collective wisdom or universal mind, is made manifest through Fohat. The collective wisdom that is carried forth by Fohat becomes Mahat, which guides Fohat in its work of manifestation. Could we get a reader for this definition from the Theosophical Glossary on Mahat? It's an important concept.
Okay, I'm going to ask Samuel to read that for us. And he also had his hand up earlier, and when I went to call on him, he was gone, but he's back again. So Samuel, you want to go ahead and make your comment, and then please read for us?
Hey, yeah, let me introduce myself. I'm sorry. I'm from Liberia, and I might have a bit of accent, so you will have a little bit of problem understanding me, but I will take
Great. No problem so far.
Okay. Before I read this, the picture you were discussing, I just wanted to share a little bit of light on there.
Sure. Here we go. Is it this one?
No, this one right here. I really like the Indian mythology, and so I think a couple of years ago I bought a little book, and it listed all of the incarnations of Law of Vishnu.
Right.
So yeah, so I think the fish over there might be representing Vishnu in one of his incarnation, and the man in the back is actually a king, I think. And I think, yeah, so there's a little book that I bought, and it kind of listed everything in there. And this is actually a flaw, but I guess there's a higher meaning to it. So out of the, I read the book, it's been a while now, so I can't really put my thoughts together.
Yeah,
but
well, that's, we went over at some point the incarnations of Vishnu.
Yeah.
And he starts out, he doesn't actually come into being a dwarf. The first two are like animals, and then he becomes a dwarf at the third, and then he goes up from there, and he ends up being Kalki, the great white returning, very much like the Buddha Maitreya, the returning one. So yeah,
exactly.
Great. That's great that you
thank you
have that interest. Appreciate that.
So I should read this one.
I'm getting back to it. Yeah, here we go. Mahat.
Okay, here we go. Mahat, Sanskrit, from the verbal root ma, to be great, cosmic mind or intelligence, the basis and fundamental cause of the intelligent operations in and of nature considered as an organism. Blavatsky called it the first product of prahana, the firstborn of the logos, universal mind limited by manvantiric duration, the cosmic noumena of matter, the one impersonal architect of the universe, the great manvantiric principle of intelligence, the third logos, and the divine mind in active operation, eternal in its essence and periodical in its manifestations. Mahat combines the ideal plans and prototypes of all beings and things. Therefore, the source of the
you skipped this line.
I'm sorry.
No problem. So start with eternal in its essence.
Okay, I'm trying to get back there. Eternal in its essence and periodical in its manifestation. Mahat combines the ideal plans and prototypes of all beings and the things in the manifested objective and subjective world. In another sense, it is the entire aggregate of the Dhyani Chohanic host, and that therefore the source of the active organic cosmic intelligence controlling and directing the operations of full heart. It is likewise the direct source of the Manisaputras, a class of Dhyani Chohanic host. In Brahmanical philosophy, Mahat is the father mother of Manas. In Sangya philosophy, it corresponds to cosmic Buddhi or Maha Buddhi, and is called the first of the 7 Prakritis or productive creation.
Thank you. Nicely read. Any thoughts or questions about Mahat?
Yes, Martha had her hand up first and then Robert. Go ahead, Martha.
Thank you. When we went back to the picture and Samuel was speaking, I looked up the black swan and what does it mean? And I know many probably already know it, but the black swan is a metaphor about surprises that have a major effect, but they seem insignificant. There are events in life that are nearly impossible to predict or incredibly rare. These traverse all subjects ranging from math and science. And then it says another thing, that black swans speak to something hidden or unknown, something that may appear too good to be true. So no matter what is going on, Swan says, have faith. So when Samuel was reading Mahat, it occurred to me how thank you for staying on this topic. Actually, Fohat and Mahat are connected to each other in some ways. There's nothing not significant in this picture.
That's very true. This is not serendipity in any way, you know. Yeah, that's somewhat exoteric what you read, though I appreciate you reading it. You know, it's like, you know, it is it represents unseen source, right? The hidden reality at whatever level you are, the hidden reality can be considered a black swan, right? It's interesting to note, you know, since Martha, you're also involved in Secret Teachings webinars, that the swan, we just read about the swan last time. And Orpheus, if you remember, reincarnated, instead of reincarnating as a person, he chose to reincarnate as a swan, which is, you could say, the very source of wisdom itself, right? So my interpretation of this, and you know, I can't give you specifics, is that there is the very source of the unseen realm in the whale, right? You know, the ocean itself cannot guide. It is just the environment, but the whale represents that first guiding principle. It'd be like the first logos, not a singularity, but a guiding principle. And then there's a step down to the swan aspect, right? Still hidden, still unseen, but now able to actually carry these universal principles, right? Which are represented by these Prajapatis, or these great ones, right? My guess is, yeah, at some point, you know, the line's going to be cut loose and you're going to have to take the tiller yourself, you know, because this recedes and you are then have to be guided by yourself. That's a further release. Well, I knew it was a fascinating picture. I'm not surprised that there's been so much interest in it. Thank you, Martha.
Francis Carey again. Can I just point out that the rope is tethered to the water spout of the whale, and therefore is likely to be set adrift at any moment.
Ah, that's really interesting. I was thinking it was like the narwhal, the horn, but it's not. You're right. It's the actual water itself. I think that's right. Which makes it more esoteric because it's so ephemeral, and yet in the length of time that such a one, actually it's pre-one, but we can drive ourselves crazy, manifest that spout would be lasting, a very, very long time, that water spout. Okay, so back to Mahat and then onwards.
Oops,
So-
hold on. Robert had his hand up.
Oh yeah, okay, go ahead.
Go ahead, Robert.
Hi, in reference to that thing we just read about the moving and the unmoving from Cosmic Fire, I grabbed my ever handy copy, and I saw that it's placed right next to a paragraph about the secret of the fire that is at the very beginning of the book. And it says, a brief sentence has its place here owing to its relation to this subject. Another sentence is also added here, which if meditated upon will prove of real value and will have a definite effect on one of these centers. Which center it is for the student himself to find out. So
Yeah,
not to put you on the spot, but I wonder in
No.
your journey, have you had that kind of experience of finding an effect on the centers or et cetera, et cetera?
When Joseph Campbell was asked what his religion was, he said his answer was underlining,
Okay.
which suggested that he wasn't a master of what he knew about. And, I would tend to take the same out, that, what you just described would be quite a high awareness, for you to ponder on and then note the effect on a particular center. But hey, I recommend it. Take it to meditation and give it a try. Shorter answer is no, I haven't worked with that particular. I'm aware of that, what you just described, because I've been reading about that lately, but I haven't taken it to meditation to see what it would be. So.
Okay, thank you. The reason I asked is I've been banging my head against the wall with those two paragraphs for decades now. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, probably the first stage would be to quit banging, and no, I'm just teasing.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So next up, we're in the middle of describing these. I love the interest you guys are showing. This is just terrific,
Francis?
Yeah.
Can I show a little more interest in that in that picture that everybody loves so much?
Oh my God.
What I noticed is we have the swan, and we have the constellation, and we have the whale, and we have the constellation. And both of them are seen in the northern hemisphere, the swan in late summer and early fall, and the whale in late fall and the winter. And I'm thinking of the celestial relationship between these two images, both representing constellations.
I think you're probably getting closer to the intention, to the esoteric intention. And then the next step would be the known meaning or mythology of the quote whale constellation. I couldn't help but notice that there are these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stars up in the sky. And then you have these 8 here, suggesting, and the way they're lined up, which never happens in nature, suggests a primordial causal time, right? And so the 8 here may be manifestations of these 8. I mean, this isn't just like accidental that, that there are these dots. You have some other stars, but this is very intentional. And the fact that there are 8 really suggests that these are like personifications of these solar, starry sources. And all this is really before any stars were formed, you know, the mythology involved in that. But I think you're onto something there. And I would add, you know, it's, you know, the more you look, the more you see. And I would add that there is a collective aura around the 7, and then the 8th is separate, suggesting that there is the 7 and 1. Well, you know, always a theosophical reference. It's the 7 and 1. Yeah. And I'm sure if we kept looking, we'd see more.
Yeah, then we'd be here all day just on this one picture.
That's right. You could spend your time, you know, in a worse way, I suppose. Okay, so are we good? Back, I'll go back to play mode here. Looks like Sam's got his hand raised.
Sam, did you have something you wanted to say?
Oh no, it's all right. It's already gone. And yeah, I'm sorry about that.
No problem. No problem. We're casual around here to a point. Okay, so the next is the swift sons of the divine sons, whose sons are the Lepika, run circular errands. The middle part of this phrase, the divine sons are the Lepika, refers to the first or primordial 7 and to the second 7. Remember this, guys? It's been a while, as described in stanza 4. The rest of this phrase is the swift sons of the divine sons run circular errands. So we'll just look at that. Fohat, as a son of the 7, refers to his activity as messenger or vahan. Okay, and I'm thinking right now that, you know, that 8th in the picture could also be Fohat as the son of the 7, which, you know, kind of puts it at in the other direction rather than him being the source. But you can drive yourself crazy with this stuff because the Lord, cosmic Lord Fohat, also had 7 sons who are the 7 brothers Fohat. So it could mean that as well. Anyway, this quote from the Secret Doctrine Dialogues, which specifically references, quote, the swift sons of the divine sons, describes the old commentary use of the term son, quote, it is simply one coming down from above to below, and that is all. By the way, if you went inside into HPB's irascibility, this is a great read because she spends the whole time just answering questions. And some of the questions are pretty, well, not too astute. And she's not at all shy to show her irritation. She's just great. Anyway, unlike AAB, who is totally transparent, right? You don't get any sense of AAB in the DK material, except for when she writes for herself. But you very definitely get a sense of Blavatsky in her writings. Next, let's address the idea that Fohat runs circular errands. Could we get a reader for this, please?
Yes, Scott, can you read that for us, please? Let me get down to you so you can. There.
Fohat runs circular errands. It is one of the fundamental dogmas of esoteric cosmogony that during the kalpas, or eons of life, motion, which during the periods of rest pulsates and thrills through every slumbering atom, commentary on Dzyan, assumes an ever-growing tendency from the first awakening of cosmos to a new day to circular movement. For the circle is Sar and Saros, or cycle, and was the Babylonian god whose circular horizon was the visible symbol of the invisible. The motion toward which the conatus, innate inclination, tends is circular, since the circle is the most perfect of all figures. Thus, the most perfect figure of a motion must be perpetually circular.
Thanks, Scott. So the first quote describes the genesis of cosmic motion, quote, motion assumes an ever-growing tendency to circular motion, an ever-growing tendency. The longer it's in motion, the greater the tendency towards the circular. In the second quote, circular movement becomes sar and saros, or cyclical, adding time to motion. Next, HPB, quoting Swedenborg, suggests the innate inclination of motion as circular. And finally, we have this quote on the subject from later in the Secret Doctrine. If we could get a reader for this, please.
Okay, and Veronica, can you read that for us now?
Hello.
Yes.
Whether one way or the other, whether for heart or the famous force of science, nameless and as difficult of definition as our foreheart himself, that something causes the universe to move with circular motion, as Plato has it, or as the occult teachings express it. The central sun causes foreheart to collect primordial dust in the form of balls, to impel them to move in converging lines, and finally to approach each other and aggregate. Book of Dzyan.
Thank you. It makes me wonder, have I been mispronouncing Plato all these years? Is it actually Plato in Greek?
No, it's me trying to make yoga with my tongue and try to speak English. It's Platon.
It's Plato.
Platon
in Greek. Wow. Okay. Probably we just say Plato because that's the English of Platon.
Yes.
But so there's an N on Plato.
Oh, and it's an O, but it's an omega. It's not a small O. It's a big O.
Oh,
Platon, the last O.
Wow. Okay. Thank you for that. It's
Thank
so
you.
great having you here, by the way.
I love it here. I really do.
Well, we had this great insight, into the Greek, and also, in the secret teachings, because we're in the Greek mysteries. It's terrific. So thank you. Okay. Any thoughts or questions about this? So in this instance, it's the central sun. So this is very much Fohat on a systemic level. Well, if you call central sun the source of our system, that is, rather than the source of all manifestation altogether, right? But even then, you can look at central sun as cosmic in that way. Next, we have Fohat is the steed and thought is the rider. Steed is another name for Vahan, or vehicle, with, to me at least, the added suggestion of velocity. I can't help but be reminded of Sleipnir, remember, in the Norse mythology? Udin's eight-legged horse, talk about what is wrong with this picture. And also the 8 legs and the 8 inhabitants of the boat. These numbers always correlate. Whose specific talent, Sleipnir's specific talent, was his ability to carry Udin, the divine principle, from one world to another. That's part of their myth. Theosophically speaking, that would be from one plane to another. The phrase, and thought is the rider, refers to the guiding influence of Mahat. Let's revisit HPB's earlier commentary on this verse. Could we get a reader, please?
Sure, I'll read that. And the thought is the rider. On the cosmic, it, Fohat, is present in the constructive power that carries out in the formation of things from the planetary system down to the glowworm and simple daisy. The plan in the mind of nature or in the divine thought with regard to the development and growth of that special thing. He is metaphysically the objectivized thought of the gods, the word made flesh. On a lower scale, and the messenger of cosmic and human ideations, the active force in universal life.
Thank you, Bill. So the plan in the mind of nature or in the divine thought is the writer. The plan itself is the writer, the director. That's, that's when you grab the tiller. Again, we have a commingling of faux hat and ma hat. Same dude, two hats. Next, he passes like lightning through the fiery clouds. Like the steed on the previous phrase, lightning is a vahan for vital electricity, which has been variously described in many cultures. Could we get a reader for this?
Yes, Lynn, can you read that, please?
Writing upon this subject, the living fire and Isis unveiled, we said of it that it was the chaos of the ancients, the Zoroastrianism sacred fire, or the Atash Baram of the Parsis, the Hermes fire, the Elms fire of the ancient Germans, the lightning Sibyl, the burning torch of Apollo, the flame on the altar of Pan, the inextinguishable fire in the temple on the Acropolis, and in that of Vesta, the fire flame of Pluto's helm, the brilliant sparks on the hats of the Dioscuri, on the Gorgon head, the helm of Pallas, and the staff of Mercury, the Egyptian Ra, the Grecian Zeus Kataibates, the descending of the Pasaneas, the Pentecostal fire tongues, the burning bush of Moses, the pillar of fire of the Exodus, and the burning lamp of Abram, the eternal fire of the bottomless pit, the Delphic oracular vapors, the sidereal light of the Rosicrucians, the Akasha of the Hindu adepts, the astral lights of Eliphas Levi, the nerve aura and the fluid of the Magnetus, the ode of the Reichenbach, the Zykod and the actinic force of Thury, the psychic force of Sergeant Cox, and the atmospheric magnetism of some naturalists, galvanism, and finally electricity. All these are but various names for many different manifestations or effects of the same mysteries, all pervading cause the, I can't see the rest of it.
The Greek archaeus. We now add, it is all this and much more. Yeah, okay. First question springs to mind, who in the heck is Sergeant Cox? But other than that, it's quite an astonishing list, isn't it? And notice that what they all have in common is that fire within the fire or behind the fire, the source of fire. It's fireness, you could say, right? Which is, akin to that electric fire of Fohat, which demonstrates on many levels, even in the subjective, it demonstrates on many levels. Okay. In the verse itself, HPB describes the fiery clouds through which Fohat passes as, quote, cosmic mists, which suggests primordial homogeneous mula prakriti, the universal source of the substantive aspect. That's the ocean that our today's favorite boat was passing through. Okay, next takes 3 and 5 and 7 strides. HPB clearly describes the 7. The 3 and 7 strides refer to the 7 spheres inhabited by man of the esoteric doctrine, as well as to the 7 regions of the earth. The 3 and 7 can also be seen as the causal and manifest components represented by the Kabbalistic tree of life. The Theosophical Trinity and septenary. You also have this like in the planetary rounds where you have 7 globes manifest and 3 in pralaya, right? Same idea. But what about the 5? In her commentary on verse 5 of this stanza, HPB says, from a cosmic point of view, Fohat taking 5 strides refers to the 5 upper planes of consciousness and being, the 6th and the 7th being the astral and the terrestrial, or the 2 lower planes. This is confirmed by DK, who says, on each plane, one of these brothers holds sway, and the 3 elder brothers rule on the 1st, 3rd, and 5th planes, or on the plane of Adi, Atma, and Manas. We also have a clue about the 5 strides in the phrase thought was the writer, since thought manifests on the 5th plane of mind, where Agni, son of Fohat, son of Lord Fohat, cosmic Lord, rules. In her commentary, HPB says, the meaning is plain. They are all symbols and emblematic, mutually and correlatively, say that fast 3 times, of spirit, soul, and body. 3, spirit, 5, soul, and 7, man or body. After citing the 3, 5, and 7 elements in the Masonic circular walk, which you know refers to this greater reality, HPB reaffirms that the 3 strides, quote, relate metaphysically to the descent of spirit into matter, of the logos falling as a ray into the spirit, then into the soul, and finally into the human physical form of man, in which it becomes life. Wow. I should ask if you have any questions about this.
Yeah, we have a couple of questions or a couple of things from Anne Veronica. First off, she says that Archaeus, that you were talking about a couple slides ago, translates to the Ancient One.
Oh, of course it does. Yes, yes. Thank you for that.
And then she asks, are you talking about the solar angels on the higher mental plane?
It's an aspect of the Fohatic vehicle, because it's the vehicle of the monad to the personality, but it's not, it's like looking at Mahat and Fohat, which are the same, and yet the emphasis is different, right? Fohat is the electrical fire by which spirit and matter connect. Mahat is what's impressed on matter, in both resulting in consciousness. And you can make a parallel in terms of Agni ruling on the 5th plane, certainly includes, because the 5th plane includes solar angels, right? It would be the highest aspect of that, right? But Agni writ large is much, much greater than just the 5th subplane of the cosmic physical plane. But that's a whole other, that's a whole other lecture. Okay, where was I? Next, through the 7 regions above and the 7 below. HBB only obliquely refers to this phrase through the comment, thus one account enumerates 7 worlds, exclusive of the nether worlds, also 7 in number. These 14 upper and nether worlds have nothing to do with the classification of the septenary chain and belong to the purely ethereal, invisible worlds. The Vayu Purana lists 14 classes of beings, probably related to the fact that there have been, according to Dowson's classical dictionary, 14 Manus. The Zoroastrian Zend Avesta tells us that there are special guard dogs who watch over the 14 heavenly regions. But De Perucker's explanation is, for me, the most satisfying. He says, note that these 7 cosmic principles and elements are, in fact, these 14 lokas, or rather lokas and talas, 7 of each. Let us first name them in order. I'm not going to name these. I don't think it serves our purpose, but you can see that the main point here being that you have an upper 7 on the heavenly planes, and then the patala loka, 7 on the lower planes, right? This illustration gives us a spatially more subjective view of how the lokas and talas demonstrate, right? You'll see that the blue column on the left is Johanna, listed on the left, is a measure of distance used in ancient India. So they actually had it down to how far these planes were apart, you know? It's extraordinary. I don't know how it translates to miles or if it's inner distance. Yeah, it's pretty extraordinary, you know? Only 80 million more Johannas to go. Okay, let's see. We also have to take into account HPB's comment embedded in the verse itself concerning the 7 regions above and the 7 below, which in her comment is the world to be. And I think what we're looking at here, and I'm wondering why it's not plural, the worlds to be, because we're talking, you know, Fohat's initial process of bonding spirit and matter, then this outer manifestation or the chain of globes, or, you know, the 7 chains of a scheme, whatever, are the 7 below. And, you know, that makes sense to me. And the 7 regions above, of course, are indicated here, which are all non-material realms. Okay. Any thoughts or questions about any of this? Finally, we have, he lifts his voice and calls the innumerable sparks and joins them. I can't help but equate lifts his voice with the voice of the Lord Svabhavat, since in both cases the voice is, like Fohat, the Vahan for all manifestation. In her commentary, HPP says, Fohat then is the transcendental binding unity of all cosmic energies, on the unseen as on the manifested planes, the action of which resembles, on an immense scale, that of a living force created by will in those phenomena where the seemingly subjective acts on the seemingly objective and propels it to action. That's one of the best definitions I've run across of Fohat right there. Keeping in mind that primordial dust is radiant like sparks, this quote describes how Fohat, quote, calls the innumerable sparks and joins them. Could we get a reader, please?
Yes, but first I want to tell you, Anne Veronica says, and this is in reference to the image that you had a minute ago, it looks like light years. Is the lower equivalent to the physical plane?
Yeah, you're talking about here, right? Yeah. Could be, yeah. Yeah. Interesting. It would be, I didn't go looking. You know, this is probably something you could find maybe even, you know, in Dowson's dictionary, you know, but just to look up Johannes, I didn't go that deep. But yeah. Okay, some subjective form of time. is my guess, right? In some kind of inner experience of time, ultimately. Okay, where were we here? Let's see, get back.
And then Martha, can you read when he gets back to where he wanted a reader?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Fohat calls the innumerable sparks and joins them. The central sun causes Fohat to collect primordial dust in the form of balls, to impel them to move in converging lines, and finally to approach each other and aggregate. The Book of Dzyan. Being scattered in space without order or system, the world germs come into frequent collision until their final aggregation, after which they become wanderers, comets. Then the battles and struggles begin. The older bodies attract the younger, while others repel them. Many perish, devoured by their stronger companions. Those that escape become worlds. Secret Doctrine 1, Volume 1, page 201.
Okay, keep in mind that, you know, the most of this quote, there's nothing physical yet, right? And that's indicated by world germs, which you could also call that like a nexus, an energetic nexus of intent, right? Which first become wheels, right? And this is where Fohat comes in. You know, it binds the intent with the substance, and you have these wheels, both inner and outer, the inner wheel being the subjective or spirit-driven aspect of the outer physical, right? So then you have aggregation according to the intent. And this whole thing about comets is very interesting. It's study in itself, which is that planets become comets first. And there's something very esoteric about the nature of comets. They're not just, you know, blobs of ice and rock flying through the universe. And then you have the more physical that comes in. The older bodies attract the younger, et cetera, et cetera. We discussed this at some length in a previous webinar in a previous verse that talked about Martanda, the eighth left out, and which is the sun who was banished to the center of the solar system. Remember that? And then the other seven were fighting it out. But this is a purely Fohatic reference here. Okay, any thoughts or questions on this or on any part of verse 2? It's been quite a verse.
And Veronica says the three moves that the three rays work equals the line, the circular, and the circular forward. I think that means spiral.
Yeah, well, in this universe, it would mean spiral.
Yes, she says yes.
Yeah, it's the unfolding of the 3 in 1. And Fohat is ever of the third aspect, demonstrative of the effect on form. Okay. Recently, I discovered an obscure series of lectures put out by MPH, initially limited to 100 subscribers, but through the miracle of the internet, we can bring them forth. And series is called Manuscript Series. The focus of issues 36 and 7 is, quote, a special class in the Secret Doctrine, with the latter issue focusing on the Stanzas of Dzyan, in which MPH makes a brief but pithy comment on each verse of each stanza. Pity that I haven't had this before, but I just discovered it this month. So let's take a look at what he has to say about this verse, verse 2 of stanza 5. And you can go get a reader and you can skip the verse. You can start here at the great latent wisdom.
Carrie, can you read that for us, please?
The great latent wisdom, which is called Zyu, becomes active and operative through the medium of Fohat, in the same way that thought becomes activity through the medium of the nerves. Fohat, the universal nerve fluid, is called the steed or Vahan, and thought or intelligence becomes the rider. Fohat passes in the form of nerve impulses through the fiery mass of the world to be. In this way, the gods gain control of the atoms, for they can later send their orders along the threads of force spun by Fohat. He passes with 3, 5, and 7 strides through the worlds and cosmic planes, which constitute 3 worlds, for the 3, 5, and 7 of Freemasonry are the same as those referred to in this ancient Tibetan book. His voice is his activity. He calls the sparks from primordial substance, and they gather round his threads of activity. An endless droning sound, like the purr of a great engine, is heard. It is Fohat, born of the friction of space.
Pretty cool, huh? I love this. So I look forward to what he has to say about each verse in the future. Or we could go all the way back to the beginning and do it all again. Any thoughts, questions on this quote? Or again, on anything having to do with verse 2? Thought it was, his unique contribution here is how he equates this to the nervous system, with its, what are they called, cities, and the Oriental medicine represents this whole series of points that are, DK tells us, are connected with the apparatus that is the nervous system, the highest point of which is the etheric centers, and all the other centers that are in the human body, all connected through the nervous system, eventually moving to the glandular, right? So, and he relates this Fohat, the universal nerve fluid. Quite interesting. Anyway. Alrighty. Any last looks back at verse 2? We've been at it for quite a while.
And Veronica says that the book has symbols on it, Mercury, the sun, and some more.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, down below. The earth and water, those are symbols for the elements. The
That's
sun,
right.
Mercury, the moon.
This is earth. This is air, moon. It looks like Venus, Mercury, sun.
No, I don't think that's Venus. I think that's a representation of the earth, maybe.
This one? Oh, yeah. This one. Yes, of course. Of course. Thank you.
Yeah, and not sure about the one at the bottom.
That sulfur, Scott, do you know what this is? It's might be sulfur. I'm not sure. I'm not an alchemist.
I don't know, but I see them operating as opposites, so it would refer to Mercury more directly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, good point.
And the fact that it is a triangle above the cross does give you the 3 at the top, that triangle.
Yeah, it does.
So there are 2 suns, so I'm not sure what's going on there.
Yeah, it's a specific alchemical.
Yeah, Christine says it is sulfur.
Oh.
And the images are different. One is the yin yang, and the other is a horizon view of
Well,
sun, or, yeah.
This is the basic duality, of spirit matter, or Mula Prakriti and the absolute, in form. The first and third logos via the second, there's so much you can do with this. And Secret Doctrine does in the proem. He talks at length about these symbols, right? Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Thanks for pointing that out. I had seen them, but hadn't actually spent any real time on it. Okay, so a lingering goodbye to verse 2. Alrighty, let's go on to verse 3, which reads, we haven't left Fohat behind though, so he is their guiding spirit and leader, he again being Fohat. When he commences work, he separates the sparks of the lower kingdom that float and thrill with joy in their radiant dwellings and forms therewith the germs of wheels. He places them in the 6 directions of space and one in the middle, the central wheel, which should be capitalized. So let's take a look at the first paragraph of HPB's commentary. Can we get a reader, please?
Karen, can you read that for us, please?
Wheels, as already explained, are the centers of force around which primordial cosmic matter expands, and passing through all the 6 stages of consolidation becomes spheroidal and ends by being transformed into globes or spheres. It is one of the fundamental dogmas of esoteric cosmogony that during the kalpas or aeons of life, motion, which during the periods of rest pulsates and thrills through every slumbering atom. The commentary on Dzyan assumes an ever-growing tendency from the first awakening of cosmos to a new day, to circular movement. The deity becomes a whirlwind. They are also called rote, the moving wheels of the celestial orbs participating in the world's creation, when the meaning refers to the animating principle of the stars and planets. For in the Kabbalah, they are represented by the Orphanim, the angels of the spheres and stars, of which they are the informing souls.
Thank you. Yeah, we quoted some of this. I think Scott read as part of this quote before, but hey, doesn't hurt to repeat. So any thoughts or questions about this? Okay, first up, wheels are the centers of force around which primordial cosmic matter expands, and passing through all the 6 stages of consolidation becomes spheroidal and ends by being transformed into globes or spheres. So we get the entire movement from the point at the center or centers of force all the way out to globes or spheres. Since this version introduces the concept of the wheel, since this verse introduces the concept of the wheel, let's take a look at what the Theosophical Glossary has to say on both the wheel and the whirlwind, which initiates a wheel's development. There's so many references to wheel in the Secret Doctrine, which are really just beginning, that we need to back up and get a good idea of what this is. And they're very much connected. You could say whirlwind precedes, the stage of the whirlwind is very connected to the wheel preceding it. Okay, could we get 2 readers for this, please?
Yes, can we please have Victor start and then Robert finish?
Where do I start at whirlwind?
Yeah, just read the whirlwind section and then Robert can read the wheel section.
The gyrating wind in theosophy, when applied to the movements of a universe, a name for the moving of the great breath and for the various functions and activities of Fohat. Motion, the divine breath, becomes the cosmic whirling or whirlwind and sets in motion the particles in space, bringing about now their coagulation and concretion, now their dissipation and dispersion. Deity, thus mystic, I can't even get that word out, becomes a whirlwind. Pulsary life assumes a whirling movement. Stages in world formation are described as diffused cosmic matter, then the fiery whirlwind, and the first stage in the formation of a nebula, leading eventually to the formation of the solar system, and more particularly of a globe or group of solar or planetary globes. Primordial seven forces, the first seven breaths of the cosmic dragon or wisdom or cosmic manifest intelligence, produced from their circumgyrating motions, the fiery whirlwind. The first chapter of Ezekiel mentions a whirlwind and other descriptions of cosmic evolution, especially wheels.
Thanks, Victor. Robert, would you read the wheels section?
Yeah, a wheel, perpetual gyratory motion, a vortex, a center of revolving force. Fohat traces spiral lines and forms wheels or centers of force around which primordial cosmic matter expands and contracts and passes through stages of consolidation ending in globes, and later through stages of etherealization. Vortical motion is a universal law, as seen in the stellar universe and in the electronic constitution of the physical atom, giving a fuller meaning to the word cycle. Wheel, cycle, globes, and revolutions all pertain to the same fundamental conception of whirling, revolving, or gyratory motion of beings and substances. And as no motion can take place except in matter, space, and time, the whirlings and revolutions of beings and things include, likewise, the time periods or cyclic returns of beings and events throughout duration. Wherever there is a whirling or turning, whether of matter or of an event in time, it is because it is a being or thing which is active and reproducing itself in cyclic events. Indeed, so intimate and entangled are the actor and the act, the being and its movements in time, that it is not always easy to distinguish the actor inherent and moving from the effects in space and time of such movement. So that when we speak of a cycle of time, we are perforce obliged to conceive of a moving entity producing the cycle, albeit the moving entity may not be visible to us and indeed may be incomprehensible. Hence the frequent and often perplexing usage of wheel or wheelings found in ancient occult writings.
Thank you, Robert. So there are a few important points here. First, Fohat initiates the objectification of divine ideation, which is the purpose for the manifestation of the universe, by, quote, tracing spiral lines, which create vortexes that in turn become wheels or centers of force. Initially, these wheels are purely energetic, as yet non-material centers, but the effect of their existence is that they draw mula prakriti, or homogeneous substance, into themselves, and through contraction, expansion, and consolidation, differentiate this most tenuous of all substances, and thus form eventually globes. Second, these wheels only occur when, quote, a being is actively reproducing itself through cyclic events. And finally, an at-oneing of the being and that being's motion occurs. This idea is restated in the section on the whirlwind, quote, deity thus mystically becomes a whirlwind. This phrase, pulsatory life assumes a whirling movement, seems to say the same thing, but the word pulsatory introduces the added concept of cyclic incarnation. Any thoughts or questions about wheels, cycles, globes, or whirlwinds?
Scott's got his hand up. Go ahead, Scott.
A couple of things. Whirlwind is related to pulsatory life Wheel is to perpetual.
Interesting.
Another thing that comes to mind here is we're talking about the spiral motion and circular motion. What's not included here and must be at another level of investigation is the movement east to west or west to east. Is it clockwise or counterclockwise? Also, is there a movement north to south? Finally, like Ezekiel's wheels, you have wheels turning upon wheels in fourth dimension. None of that is covered at this point.
Yeah, that's interesting. And of course not in our text, or we would know, or in this old commentary. At one point I did I don't know, for some paper, I did a search for all references to the directions, to the four directions in DK. And there was very specific meanings, but also very much veiled, as to what it means. They're quite subjective in their orientation. And of course, Freemasonry is very specific about the meaning of direction. You don't just sit anywhere.
All right. Well, and you have just turning a screw and you have one direction turns it in and one takes it out. So you have there's a coming into form and one of dissolving, and that is mentioned here.
It is. And, in the swastika, we have that indicated. You have the left turning and the right turning. Swastika is one driving spirit into form and one releasing spirit from form. At least that's one use of the symbol.
Right.
So there's directionality, but not the four directions. You have the up-downness of it, but not the four directions, or the in-out, aspect, but not the four directions. Now what I remember is south in general suggests the movement towards form, and the north suggests the movement towards spirit. And we have the pole star, which at this point is the source of spirit in our solar system, or for the Earth specifically. And you could, if you want to put a finer point on that, you're welcome to. And then you have, in certain cultures, of course, east is very often the direction of manifested spirit, or of the soul, whereas in the north you have the unmanifest. You could say difference between monad and soul. So you have the rising sun, which is indicative of the solar aspect, right, of Surya, as opposed to the physical sun in the east, right? And often, altars are oriented towards the east, and people pray facing the east, whatever. But then in Egypt, for instance, the Amenti lies to the west, so the moving into the underworld, the door is to the west, which is interesting, on the west side of the Nile. You have any further thoughts on that, anyone? Scott?
Oh, we could go on talking about that for some time. I was just bringing up the directionality is not.
Yeah, trying to come, to
some point
look at meaning and direction is really an interesting subject in and of itself, right? And of course, it changes from culture to culture, but interestingly, there's a lot of correlation also, like in mythology, in terms of orientation of temples, etc. Go ahead, Bia.
Martha has her hand up. Go ahead, Martha.
I couldn't find. When we were talking about this in the wheels, it brought to mind the law of periodicity. And I'm clearly a student this law governs all manifestations, whether it's the manifestation of a solar logos through the meaning of a solar system or the manifestation of a human being. And it's connected to the first ray. I believe that the reference was the 7 rays on page 65. And it talks about, but it occurred to me that basically the 2 wheels are not the wheels of the zodiacal wheels, but there's an effort to describe a cyclic appearance, and that it governs a ray, and that DK, I'm looking at 7 rays on page 65, but that somehow there's this particular reading that you lifted out, John Francis, it points to the notion of and scientific energetic and energy itself, that when Scott was speaking, I saw that in this law of periodicity, one of the ways it's explained is the cyclic motion and the rotary motion have to blend with the forward motion. That would be the directional motion that I think Scott was referring to. But it's actually 3 energies rather than 4, if I understand the purpose of the law of periodicity.
Well, very often the 4th is that which is being carried, because it's the substantive aspect. Well, you said a mouthful. The 2 wheels, when it's just 2 wheels, usually have the inner immovable, the spirit aspect, which is embedded by Fohat in the outer movable wheel, which then is subject to cycle, right? And we had a slide here that described, it was 3 quotes that showed the 3 aspects of the wheel, and the middle one was the cyclic end, which is the one that the Babylonians used to show their god emerging out of, which is pretty fascinating. I don't know if there's a question in there or not, but I appreciate your input there. Okay.
And then Anne Veronica, oops, we're getting quite late. Anne Veronica says the act and the actor entangled, it brings into mind the atom and the TCF matter energy coming in from another direction. And you reminded me rays come in from north to south, if I remember well, and the planes from east to west.
Oh, that's right. That was one of the most fascinating directional things. And of course, these are subjective, energetic ideas, right? And in a way, that gives you a real strong understanding of the difference. The planes are material, the 3rd aspect, the material aspect, right? Plane lords are a 3rd aspect, Davic being. And so the fact that they are east to west suggests that that's, that the rotation of the planes east to west suggests that that's the material aspect of evolution, and that the rays revolving north to south, well, that's influential, right? That suggests the quality aspect, and that's a north to south. Huge topic, but that at least that introduces us to it. And that is going to have to be it for today.
Well, he's got to be really quick because it does have to be it for the day, but Samuel's had his hand up.
Okay.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, it's just a question concerning the wheel. Could it mean world instead of duration? Could the world wheel refer to world?
World, you mean?
Yes, like globe or world.
Of course. Yeah, the first thing you have is that germ of energy at the center, which through gyratory motion becomes a vortex or revolving force. And then it takes to itself cosmic matter, right? Which ends after these stages of consolidation, ends in globes and spheres, literally physical spheres, right? But you have to keep in mind that, the actual existence of a, earth, water, air, globe is a relatively rare event, happening only once in a cycle of 7 globes. So most wheels / globes / spheres are etheric or less tenuous, right?
Okay.
Okay. Yes, everyone. Thank you so much for attending. Can we get dates, because we're going to be
Sure.
going into
Sure.
conference mode here.
Right. The conference, the ceremonial starts on Wednesday. The astrological workshop starts on Friday. On Sunday, the 7-ray workshop starts, and the main workshop starts on Monday or Tuesday. Sorry, I forget what. I can't even see my calendar.
7ray.org if you want to know more.
Right. It'll give you that. Okay. The next Secret Doctrine webinar in this series is going to be on the 16th of May. And before that, on the 9th of May, we will have the next Secret Teachings of All Ages. So.
Right. So no interruption, except that the secret teachings, like happened this month, we get bumped to the 2nd rather than the first Sunday. But other than that, it's just straightforward, right? So we'll have, let's see, 1 week right after the other. The secret teachings 1 week on the 2nd Sunday, and followed by the Secret Doctrine on the 3rd. So good. Thank you all for attending. It's I love doing this, and I'm hoping you're enjoying it too. See you next time, and I hope you will consider the conference. By the way, I'm doing my plenary presentation on FOHAT, and so there'll be a bit of repeat from what you heard today, but that's only a good thing, right? So until next time, see you later.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.